Hey everyone, Happy New Year. I'm Vladimir Jutit. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. If you haven't been around me for the last couple of weeks, let me remind you what you're looking at back here. These are feeds coming into the CBS News Broadcast Center from all of our stations and affiliates around the country. If it's happening out there, we're going to bring it to you live right here in Studio 55. Let us begin the new year together. Millions of Americans are bracing for a brutal winter storm and dangerous conditions as a powerful system barrels across the country. We are on the ground following the very latest conditions. Plus, 4 years after Donald Trump's supporters stormed the Capitol, Congress is set to certify his election victory. What's different today? We're going to tell you. We're also going to show you the additional security measures deployed all around the Capitol. Plus, an 11th hour executive action from President Biden as he tries to block the incoming Trump administration from expanding offshore drilling. This is CBS News 24/7. Winter storms are gripping many parts of the country. Tens of millions of folks are under winter weather alerts as snow, freezing rain, and bitter cold temperatures move in. Let's bring in CBS News national weather correspondent Rob Marciano with the first look at the national forecast. He's in Washington, D.C. Rob, it keeps getting, I see the inches piling up there.
Yeah, it is. We've got about 6 inches on the ground now, and obviously a pretty good snow rate happening right now. So we'll keep piling this up throughout the day. The Capitol behind me, federal offices are closed except for essential personnel, but Congress is essential. So they're in there. We've seen a lot of activity, but you can see the roads here are just not that great. So, you know, it's still D.C. It's not really a northern city, so we don't get snows like this often. Last time we had a significant snowstorm was 3 years ago. Last one of this magnitude, probably closer to 2019. All right, let's show you the radar. We had icing issues as well for Kentucky, Virginia. We got over 100,000 people without power in Virginia. You see some of the blues on the radar there. And the snows go all the way back to Illinois and Indiana still. So we still have a lot to get through here. There'll be a bit of a break between the surface low and the upper low that's farther west. So maybe a couple of hours where this goes away and then comes back at D.C. and Baltimore and maybe Philadelphia. New York City and I-95 through Connecticut, there's some snow on the radar, but not much of that is hitting the ground. Shouldn't be too much of an impact. But here, certainly impact not only federal offices closed, but schools are closed. And, you know, a lot of kids have been off for 2 weeks already, and now they get a snow day. So I don't know what the parents think about that. But regardless, been a while, and this is a high-impact storm. Vlad?
Yeah, when I was 10, it would have been amazing. Now that I'm a dad, I'm like, you're going to school. All right, Rob. Thank you, brother. We'll check in with you a little bit later.
Okay.
We lost somebody because it said Manny, and now it's not Manny. So let's talk about this. The House and the Senate will gather today to certify Donald Trump's victory in the 2024 presidential election. 4 years ago today, a group of his supporters, you'll recall, stormed the Capitol to try and prevent Congress from certifying Joe Biden's win. I want to bring in CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian, who's tracking developments. Nicole, what are you learning about today's certification process? I know you were very present 4 years ago when those supporters of Donald Trump stormed the Capitol.
Yeah, well, just to be clear, I was not here at the Capitol on January 6th, but I was at the time with President-elect Joe Biden in Delaware as he responded to the violence that unfolded here that day. Of course, coming just 2 weeks before his inauguration. At the time, he told me he was not concerned about his safety, but really what a difference 4 years makes. One thing that is consistent in covering Capitol Hill in the run-up and the days after January 6th, I can tell you that security was paramount, and it is once again here today where there are barriers surrounding the Capitol complex. So much so it does take some time and energy to get through, in addition to trudging through the snow. So that is one thing that lawmakers will encounter as they come here today to certify the electoral count. This is mostly expected to be a pretty ceremonial process, with the Vice President Kamala Harris presiding over this count, which should also be interesting optics, considering that she was defeated by the president-elect, who won 312 electoral votes. So she will read aloud the count from each state. Congress, by law, is required to count these votes, and so we expect this to be conducted through a joint session of Congress. But again, at this point in time, it should be relatively ceremonial and mundane in terms of Congress completing its task.
Yeah, so Nicole, why aren't Republicans contesting this election?
Well, they won. So, I mean, I think it's as simple as that. And not only that, but as the president-elect has made clear, I mean, they see this as a mandate. The fact that he won these 312 electoral votes, they feel, and the fact that they won this trifecta, both winning the House and Senate, that is why they feel very emboldened to carry out the president-elect's agenda. So much so, we know House Republicans just over the weekend, after Speaker Mike Johnson was reelected, even though there was a little bit of drama with that vote, but they sat down that following Saturday and they strategized, and they intend to move forward with this process called budget reconciliation to try to expedite the president-elect's agenda. And we have now learned that the president-elect favors this approach of really bundling all of his priorities into one bill. So that does appear to be the approach that the congressional Republicans would like to take as soon as the president-elect assumes office on January 20th.
All right, got it. When you win, everything's on the up and up. When you lose, it's rigged. Nicole Killian for us on the Hill. Always great to have you, my friend. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
All right, let's check back in on that severe winter weather that's gripping the country. CBS News national correspondent Manny Bojorquez has been driving from Tennessee to Kentucky in the thick of that severe weather. Manny, what are you seeing on the road there?
Hey there, just to let you know the impact on travel, I was trying to fly into Louisville yesterday where we're seeing the really heavy impacts. No go, flights canceled. So that's why we're now heading north on I-65, trying to get to the Louisville area. The intrepid producer here, Andre Tinoco, doing a careful job of getting through some of this. So far, it's okay here. I'm going to put the camera around so that you can see the conditions here. It's starting to stick on the sides here. But in Louisville, they already saw yesterday 7 inches of snow at the airport. That's a one-day record, and they're expected 1 to 3 more inches today. And also, of course, the ice is the big problem. Not expected to go above freezing anytime soon, over this week, really. So the problem there, of course, is that you have that ice and the snow not melting away. You have a breeze coming through. Next thing you know, a branch is down and you have power outages. So those are some of the things that we're expected to see as we continue to head north.
The storm packed a punch in Missouri. What about Tennessee and Kansas? What are you hearing about those states?
Yeah, Tennessee is not getting the worst of it. Kansas did see a lot of icing, and that's where you're seeing a lot of images of, people stranded on the side of the roads, big rigs slipping around, sliding all over the place, which is why officials stress not do what we're doing, is don't be on the roads if you don't have to be. And so they do have the snow plows out. They've got the salt trucks out, but they have to focus and prioritize those main arteries. In Kentucky, for example, state offices were closed down by the governor, and they said they're going to keep those trucks, trying to keep things clear, but they got to focus, for example, on roads that lead to hospitals or some of the largest employers in the state.
All right, I see Andre's got both hands on the wheel. Both of you are wearing your seatbelt. All right, safe travels, fellas. Be good. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
All right, some brand new images from the FBI showing the man behind the deadly New Year's Day terror attack in New Orleans. You can see Shamsuddin Jabbar on Bourbon Street in this video. Along with that cooler, police found loaded with an explosive device. They're looking into previous trips he made to New Orleans as well as to Egypt and to Canada. CBS News correspondent Omar Vranka is live in New Orleans for us this morning, and he joins me now to update us. So, Omar, tell us what investigators are saying about this new batch of evidence.
Well, we got some new details. The ATF confirmed that they found explosive materials in Jabbar's home in Houston, but also here at the Airbnb he rented in New Orleans. They also showed us that video that you mentioned, and they told us that Jabbar took it in October. And what's interesting is that he recorded it with a camera on his glasses. It was Meta, so they're glasses that are like this, but they have a camera built in, and they can record up to 60 seconds. They also have live streaming capabilities. He was wearing them during the attack, the investigators were telling us, but they were not on.
Omar, as you know, Mardi Gras season kicks off today in New Orleans, and there are a few parades planned already in the city. Tell us about the security prep.
Well, and keep in mind here, Vlad, these are walking parades. These aren't the big parades that people are used to seeing. with like Mardi Gras floats and people throwing beads. These are much smaller parades that are going around. They don't really come into the heart of the French Quarter. But I asked the mayor this. I actually asked her during the press conference yesterday. These are going on. People are concerned. What kind of security is being done? She didn't give details, but she said there would be added security. They're also going to be hardening targets in the French Quarter here, adding, more bollards and stuff. We see construction. Part of what you hear is construction crews rolling down here on Bourbon Street. But they're trying to assure people that things will be safe here for Mardi Gras season. And keep in mind, Vlad, that the Super Bowl is coming here next month.
Wow. All right. Omar Vranka for us in New Orleans this morning. Thanks, Omar. The President of the United States is also headed to New Orleans today. In addition, Japan's Nippon Steel and U.S. Steel have filed a federal lawsuit challenging the president's decision to block a $15 billion takeover deal. They're claiming there was illegal political influence and that their due process rights have been violated. Senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe is at the White House. So, Ed, break down what's in these lawsuits.
Essentially, the two companies, Vlad, were hoping to merge in order to buoy U.S. Steel and become part of the larger Nippon Steel Corporation. This was a merger, however, that required review by a federal board that oversees essentially international mergers that have potential national security risks. And ultimately, the White House, through the president, decided they wanted to block this deal, believing that it was bad for American jobs and bad potentially for American national security should a key element of national security and infrastructure be owned by that foreign company. And they're also blaming the president and claiming that he's under undue influence of labor unions that he promised he would block the deal for, saying that that is essentially the political favor that he's returning, and they believe that that violates their due process rights. So we'll see whether that legal challenge is able to move. This is sort of an 11th hour decision that the president tried to make here in the closing days. The president-elect notably has said that he thinks differently about this, so there's a good chance this gets dragged out a few more weeks or months into the Trump administration, and ultimately perhaps they let it go through.
So speaking of 11th hour and the flurry of activity, not just behind you, Ed, but also from the Oval Office, talk to me about what the president is doing regarding offshore oil and gas drilling.
He's banning more of it in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Another big win for environmentalists that have been pushing him to make some big, bold moves here in the closing weeks of the Biden administration. White House saying this would add to other drilling that has been banned in other parts of U.S. oceanic territories, at least. And it's part of a big week of announcements involving the environment, whether it was this decision or one that he's going to announce tomorrow in California, expanding federal protection of land there across much of Southern California, the Coachella Valley. It's going to end up being one of the largest federally protected areas of the country, in a big move that had been requested by environmentalists out in California and across the country. And not only does it do that, but it also potentially leaves some space for renewable energy production, like wind energy. So a big week in terms of trying to get some environmental work done. The president would like to point out, or always pointed out, that he was someone who had been pretty active in this space as a senator and as a vice president, and had made some big moves on climate change and the environment as president. Never necessarily got the headlines that other subjects do. By making these moves this week, it's hoped that he could at least burnish his legacy in those areas as well.
Let me ask you about the reporting, Ed. And in fact, I think I saw your text earlier this week. Oh, Canada, that the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, is expected to step down as soon as today, maybe in the next couple of hours. What are you hearing?
Yeah, well, we cover the American presidency around here, but eyes are turning north to Ottawa, where it sounds like the Canadian Prime Minister later this hour could very well be announcing he is preparing to step down, likely holding on until his party picks a new leader. In essence, Canada is catching up with the rest of the world and is seeing the kind of rightward shift in its politics that's happened here in the United States and other parts of Europe and Asia as well. Trudeau, of course, has been prime minister for about 9 years and is facing a lot of the same economic headwinds that other incumbent governments in the UK and Germany and here in the United States have been facing. So the voters are ready to turn on him. And so we will see here in the coming minutes or hours what he announces and how quickly his party is able to pick a new leader. But elections are set to be held in Canada later this year. They're a parliamentary system, of course, so you're voting for an MP, a member of parliament, or for the party overall, not necessarily for the leader or the person. And it is expected, at least the current forecasts, that the Conservative Party would return to power after 9 years of Trudeau being there at whatever it is they call the Prime Minister's house in Ottawa. I should know that. But Parliament House certainly is where they do all their business.
I love it. Ed, thank you very much, my friend. Appreciate it. All right, coming up, folks, we're going to take you live to Atlanta, where the public is paying their respects to former President Jimmy Carter for the final day. What we know about his state funeral, which is set for later this week. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. As we mentioned at the top of the show, today marks 4 years since a group of Trump supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol to try and prevent Congress from certifying President Joe Biden's presidential win. I want to bring in CBS News political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns, who joins me now from West Palm Beach, Florida. Caitlin, good to see you. So the president-elect has said that he plans to pardon many of those who were charged in connection with that attack. Has he explained why?
Yeah, Vlad, the president-elect has said that in the first few minutes of taking office, he plans to issue pardons for January 6th defendants. But there are a lot of open questions about what exactly he means by that. Last month at a press conference here in West Palm Beach, or at Mar-a-Lago, I should say, I asked him, does that mean blanket pardons? And he essentially said, stay tuned. And there are a couple of different ways to think about this. You have nearly 1,600 defendants of January 6th. Not all were charged with violent crimes, some with misdemeanors. So is it a pardon for those charged with misdemeanors, or about 170 charged with violent crimes, things like harming police officers, breaking into the Capitol, using force and violence? So those remain the open questions, whether this is a blanket pardon issued to all January 6th defendants or a group of them. That remains to be seen. But this is something that the president-elect has been pledging to do since he's been on the campaign trail. He has called them hostages, if you recall. So we're waiting to see what exactly that means. There's a few different ways he can go about it, but he has pledged to issue pardons within minutes of taking office on January 20th.
Okay, let me ask you about this. We're also learning that his lawyers have asked the judge in his hush money case to delay Friday's sentencing. What are you hearing about that?
That's right. His lawyers have asked to delay sentencing because they are appealing the immunity ruling from that judge in New York. Just to take a step back here, remember, when the Supreme Court issued its immunity ruling, the Trump lawyers tried to apply that to this New York hush money case. And the judge in that case said that that ruling doesn't apply because these were acts taken before the president took office. The president's team, the president-elect's team at the time, was arguing that, well, statements from White House staffers and statements that Trump made at the time were used as evidence in that case, but the judge said no. Remember, the Trump legal team wanted this case to be thrown out entirely, and this was, using those immunity grounds, and the judge said no, it has to stand and sentencing has to go forward because that would do justice to the justice system in effect. So now you have the Trump team arguing for a pause in sentencing as they appeal that ruling from the judge once again to the state. And so they have asked for a decision about this, asking for a pause by 2 p.m. today to get an answer in this case.
All right, Caitlin Huey-Burns for us in West Palm Beach. Thanks, Caitlin. Americans are paying their respects to former President Jimmy Carter. Of course, you'll know that he died last month at the age of 100 years old. The 39th president is lying in repose at the Carter Center before his remains are taken to the nation's capital, which will happen tomorrow. He will then lie in state. CBS News correspondent Skylar Henry is joining us now from Atlanta, Georgia, where long lines of mourners have been forming. Skylar, describe the atmosphere there at the Carter Center from the people who've come to pay their respects.
Yeah, Vlad, we were here on Saturday during the first service as part of this state funeral, and lines of people filled throughout the Carter Center, all hoping to catch a glimpse of the motorcade of the 39th president. Today, we see more people coming to pay their respects, as you see there on the screen. This is one of those things that's open to the public, and it will be up until 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, and so people have brought their families, children, all to come say their goodbyes to a man who meant so much to the state of Georgia. And, you know, that is really what we have seen and heard from so many who we've spoken with since we've been here in the hours following the announcement of President Carter's passing, in that so many have come to say that what he was able to accomplish in his second act, what he was able to do following his time in the White House, is really what they have grown to champion. And that's everything from his humanitarian work across the globe to the work that he did right there in Plains. And, you know, a lot of folks say that they like to just go talk to Mr. Jimmy, whether that at the dollar store or they're at the Maranatha Baptist Church there in Plains. And so a lot of people say that, yes, they are filled with grief, but also with pride, because they know that he did so much for so many people around the world.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Skylar. And so what do we expect over the next couple of hours? I know that people are still lining up there. And then what happens when he is transferred to Washington?
Yeah, so as I said, people, the public, will have their opportunity to pay their respects up until tomorrow morning at around 6 o'clock. From there, the casket will be then taken to Washington, D.C. We anticipate there to be several stops along that route before he lies in state at the U.S. Capitol, one including some time in front of the U.S. Naval headquarters there near Washington, D.C., obviously signifying his time while serving in the Navy. There is also supposed to be a service there at the Capitol. We'll see if the snow has any sort of impacts there in Washington, D.C. in terms of any sort of delays as far as that process. But from there, he will lie in state until January 9th. That is when that state funeral will be at the National Cathedral in Washington, where we anticipate President Biden to deliver a eulogy. We also know that President-elect Donald Trump and other former presidents, other dignitaries will be in attendance to say their goodbyes as well.
All right, Skylar Henry for us in Atlanta, Georgia. Thanks, Skylar. Costco is recalling some of its Kirkland cold and flu medication. What you need to know about the possible contamination ahead. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Here's a look at some of the top stories we're following. Multiple outlets are reporting that Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is planning to resign as early as this week. Trudeau has led the Liberal Party for 11 years and served as Canada's Prime Minister for 9. According to several reports, Trudeau is expected to step down ahead of a general election meeting on Wednesday that he is widely expected to lose. Trudeau is also expected to speak in about 15 minutes. We'll bring you those comments when they happen. You may need to check your medicine cabinet. Costco is pulling some of its cold and flu medicines from shelves. The over-the-counter Kirkland Severe Cold and Flu Plus Congestion is being recalled due to a potential foreign material contamination. So far, no one has become sick. South Korea's military says North Korea fired a ballistic missile nearly 700 miles towards the sea off its eastern coast. That's according to the South Joint Chief of Staff. The middle-range missile was launched near the North Korean capital of Pyongyang. The test launch comes as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was in Seoul for talks with officials to discuss North Korea's nuclear threat. Tens of millions of people are under winter weather alerts from the Midwest to the East Coast. Snow, freezing rain, and bitter cold temperatures are blanketing parts of the country. CBS News national weather correspondent Rob Marciano is live from Washington, which is seeing several inches of snow right now. Rob, what can you tell us?
Still snowing, buddy. We're waiting for that break we talked about 20 minutes ago. Maybe it'll come in a couple hours. It is pretty, though, I can tell you that. You know, it's been 3 years since we had any sort of real snow here in D.C. So folks are, you know, just getting around slow, kind of enjoying it. But the roads are a mess. I mean, you know, this is the kind of thing that they have for snow removal here, right? Basically a glorified broom. So it's hard to get rid of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 inches of snow, which is what they're dealing with today. Let's talk about how much snow has accumulated elsewhere. Obviously, this is a big storm that's been hitting much of the Midwest all weekend long with heavy snow. I mean, places like Kansas City saw 11 inches of snow. I know that doesn't sound much if you live on the East Coast. We get blizzards of 10, 20 inches of snow. But in the Midwest, to get over 10 inches of snow anywhere, that's significant. And that's the most snow that Kansas City has had in one day in over 60 years. And then you see a huge swath of of 6 to basically 12 inches of snow right up the Ohio River Valley, and then there's icing across parts of Kentucky. We're seeing icing as well in Virginia. And because of that, significant power outages, over 300,000 people without power, and that number will likely go up. All right, let's go through where this storm is going. It's got a big breadth to it. Very, very wide storm. We've got the surface low where I am right now, and the upper low, which will come through much, much later. And when it does that, we'll get more in the way of snow. Winter storm warnings remain up from Illinois all the way to the East Coast, and they won't expire until at least after midnight, which is around when the snow will come to an end here. But you see the break that we think is coming, maybe between noon and 4 o'clock, but by 6, 7 o'clock, another pulse coming out of the Appalachians onto the I-95 corridor. So a late evening commute will probably be more of a mess here. Schools are closed, and temperatures are dropping. Okay, temperatures are going to be way, way below normal, especially tomorrow, and then again on Wednesday, and not just for areas that saw the snow. Cold air below that to where folks had severe weather just yesterday across Louisiana. Temperatures will be in the teens and 20s across many areas. So what does fall today, Vlad, is going to stick around until further notice. So we're in winter. Just got to embrace it. Back to you.
Yeah, ready to do that. Rob Marciano for us. Thank you, Rob. And that winter blast is causing some travel delays and cancellations across the U.S. More than 1,000 flights are being impacted as people return home from their holiday weekend. Our Chris Van Cleve has the latest.
Traveling is going to be challenging during this storm. If you're flying today into the Midwest or the East Coast, expect the possibility of delays. More than 1,500 flights canceled by Monday morning. Those numbers are going to grow as the day goes on, as this storm moves through. In the Midwest, you're going to see recovery there. This is the effort to dig out. But there are still issues. Like here in Chicago, where the storm is not really hitting, there's a little bit of moisture, precipitation here, bitter cold temperatures. That's causing delays here at Chicago O'Hare as they have to treat runways and de-ice airplanes. And it is very cold across much of the country. So even where the storm isn't hitting, expect delays. Now, if you're in the D.C. area, Philadelphia, you're going to see disruptions. In fact, other airports we're watching into the New York City area, as well as throughout the Midwest. On the roads, we're still seeing slick and treacherous conditions. Conditions where trucks jackknife, where people slide off the roads. If you don't need to travel through the storm area, best to give it another day. But we saw significant issues with getting around in parts of the Midwest yesterday. Expect that to play out in the D.C. area as this goes on. Now, airlines do have travel waivers in effect, and that basically means you can change your flights without additional cost to travel on a day not impacted by weather. That's not a bad idea if you have the flexibility to do so, particularly if you're trying to get in or out of the D.C. area or the Midwest, the sections of the country that really got hit with this storm. When you get to the airport, you may notice increased airport security. The TSA has heightened security ahead of the inauguration, particularly flights going into the D.C. area may see additional screening at the gates. Also, air marshals will be on additional flights given the heightened security. Back to you.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. Capitol Hill is heavily secured this morning ahead of a joint session of Congress to certify Donald Trump's election win. I want to bring in CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Skanga for more. So, Nicole, I can already see the barriers that are there. Many of those barriers were put into place 4 years ago in the wake of the insurrection. But what are you seeing today?
Good to be with you, Vlad. And we're along Pennsylvania Avenue, just down the road, the U.S. Capitol. You can see that 8-foot ring of steel behind me. There is even more fencing further down the road. I can tell you I was almost in this exact spot 4 years ago on January 6, 2021, and it is just night and day by comparison. Of course, there's the winter weather, but then there is security. Let's take the latter first. We have an unprecedented moment here in the nation's capital. Today, January 6th, the certification of the electoral count. In a couple days, former President Jimmy Carter's funeral, plus January 20th, of course, the inauguration right down the corner. Those three events all designated as what's called a National Special Security Event, or NSSE. And that is important because that is the highest federal protective status of any event. It's the same that is given to a State of the Union address or to the Super Bowl, and it unlocks federal funds and resources, everyone from the United States Secret Service, U.S. Capitol Police, to the FBI, CBP, ICE, FPS, all of those three-letter acronyms, security on the ground, thousands of officers here in place. The special agent in charge, Matt McCool, for the Secret Service's Washington field office, saying this event is going to look very different than it did 4 years ago, similar to the president's State of Union address. We also have 500 National Guard on standby here in the nation's capital. Of course, all of this not happening in a vacuum. We are just days away as the FBI continues its investigation into the events into New Orleans, and of course, that Tesla Cybertruck explosion in Las Vegas. And, federal authorities, including the FBI, put out a bulletin last Friday warning of the potential of copycat attacks. And you heard Chris mention it just there, increased security not only at the nation's airports, also at train stations, Union Station nearby, and military bases across the country. The weather, of course, impacting today's security plan a bit. The mayor declaring a winter emergency. That means these federal buildings around us are closed in addition to public schools. But all of that activity on the Hill very much a go, and emergency response teams trying to clear these streets to ensure that that activity can go smoothly today, Vlad.
All right, Nicole Skanga for us in the capital, the nation's capital, on a snowy day. Thank you very much, Nicole. Appreciate it. All right. Speaking in the South Korean capital of Seoul earlier, Secretary of State Antony Blinken expressed optimism that a ceasefire in Gaza could be agreed upon before President Biden leaves office. This comes amid reports that Hamas has approved a list of 34 Israeli hostages to be released in the first phase of a potential deal. CBS News foreign correspondent Remy Inocencio has more from Tel Aviv.
Right, 2 weeks from today, President Biden's term ends and Donald Trump returns as president. But in that time, the White House is making a last-ditch effort to broker that ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in South Korea right now, in his own final days in the job, by the way, said that this is the home stretch. Take a listen.
What we've seen in the last couple of weeks is a re-intensified engagement, including by Hamas. We very much want to bring this over the finish line in the next 2 weeks, the time that we have remaining. And we will work every minute of every day of those 2 weeks to try to get that to happen.
And the talk also this morning is about a list that Hamas released of 34 hostages. That's a mix of people believed to be alive and dead that the group says it's willing to hand over in a deal. 21 of those are women and men between the ages of 50 up to 85. It also includes children that Hamas claims were killed in an Israeli airstrike. Now, all those make up about a third of the 100 or so hostages still believed held in Gaza. But Hamas says that Israel needs to agree to withdraw from Gaza and to agree to a permanent ceasefire. Those have been major demands since last summer, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his cabinet have so far not capitulated. And just this past weekend, more than 100 people were reportedly killed in more Israeli bombings up and down the Strip. That's pushing the total number of dead toward the 46,000 mark, and that's according to the health ministry run by Hamas. And Blinken did add that if a ceasefire is not accomplished by this January 20th, he says he still believes and is very confident that a deal will be done, but under President Trump, of course, but on the basis, he says, of President Biden's plan. And we've got 2 weeks left until that transition. Back to you.
All right, Ramy, thank you. The nation's first congestion toll pricing is in effect right here in New York City. Details about the plan and the legal challenges it faces. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. As we've been reporting this morning, a winter storm is blanketing parts of the East Coast with snow. The Philadelphia area is expected to see a few inches, which could complicate travel in the area. CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore is in the thick of it in Philly for us right now. Grant, looks pretty bad.
It does, and that's the thing, Vlad. Good morning to you, by the way, and all of you watching at home or wherever you're watching this morning. We're here in Center City, Philadelphia, which is really the heart of the city, and we've picked up about an inch of snow so far. It started to snow right around 6:30 this morning. It was a light snow at first, but it's been a steady snow pretty much all the way up until around the top of the hour, till around 10 o'clock. Now we're starting to see kind of a mixture of a break or two of some snow, but look, this part of the country, here in the Northeast and down into the Mid-Atlantic, we actually haven't seen a lot of snow over the last couple of years. So getting this snow is really just getting us back into the times that we remember going back 5 or 6 years ago. You're talking about a significant kind of drought of snow. So everyone's kind of saying, yeah, bring it on. Let's go. So the city here in Philadelphia, we're expecting to see around 3 to 4 inches of snow. But you get into southern New Jersey. Maybe you're familiar with Cape May or Atlantic City. Some places, the farther south you go down the Jersey Shore, they could see upwards of 7 to 9 inches of snow. And along the shore, those are places that typically don't get into these big amounts of snow. It's usually up in the Poconos Mountains. But look, Delaware, South Jersey, expected to get 7 to 10, maybe even some places close to a foot of snow. But here in Philadelphia, even though just a 3 to 4 incher, that could still result in a lot of travel issues. So we are looking at actually relatively decent conditions on the roads. I think the crews, the Department of Transportation crews are doing a great job so far. They've salted the roads, they're clearing the roads, and a lot of the main and then the secondary roads are handling it pretty well. But look, this snow is probably not going to taper off until later on this afternoon into this evening, and that's where we're going to get into not just the snow, but the bitterly cold wind chills that are going to pick up. We'll see wind gusts up around 30 miles per hour tonight into tomorrow. Feels like temperatures in the teens to single digits flat. So the snow is coming down. We get a decent amount, more than we've seen in a while, and it's going to hang around for a while, which a lot of people, like I said, are actually looking forward to it.
All right, buckle up. Grant Gilmore for us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's right.
A major test for New York City's controversial congestion pricing plan. The first of the nation tolling program is now officially underway as of yesterday. It affects all traffic below 60th Street in Manhattan and is expected to reduce traffic by some 80,000 vehicles per day. The MTA says so far, so good. Commuters, not so much. CBS News reporter Elijah Westbrook has the latest.
Good morning. Well, right now we are standing on Manhattan's Upper East Side, just several feet away from what's called the Central Business District on now this second day of congestion pricing. We know at this time that drivers will be charged at least $9 to enter that zone. So that's 60th Street and south. Right here in Manhattan, we know that the price goes up for larger vehicles. Trucks, those really big trucks, in some cases will have to pay as much as $21.60. Off-peak hours, you're looking at maybe $2.25, depending on the specific zone in which you're entering here in Manhattan. But it's a highly controversial tolling program that we've been talking about for years. It's finally launching at the top of 2025. We had the chance to speak with some drivers who are navigating the changes. As you can imagine, mixed reviews today. Some people, they understand where the money is going. It's supposed to help fund the city's mass transit system. Others are saying, well, we can't catch a break. This, as we know, the MTA's fares have gone up or will go up at some point later this year. It's as much as $3. So, of course, we'll continue to stay here on Manhattan's Upper East Side, continue to monitor the conditions, and we will keep you posted. That's the very latest at this time from Manhattan's Upper East Side. I'm Elijah Westbrook, CBS News, New York.
All right, Elijah, thank you very much. Any minute now, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is set to speak amid reports he is planning on stepping down. We'll bring you there live as soon as he begins. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Britain's Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has condemned what he calls lies and misinformation following a number of attacks posted online by Elon Musk. This as several European leaders have expressed concerns about the billionaire and Trump's allies and his involvement in their domestic policies. CBS News reporter Lee Kinnery has more from London.
Elon Musk, the world's richest man, is making headlines worldwide after posting multiple statements on social platform X, criticizing British politicians and listing a poll asking if America should, quote, liberate the people of Britain from their tyrannical government. To clarify, the democratically elected Labour Party is currently in power in the UK after a landslide election last summer. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer is a former lawyer, and some of Musk's criticism is aimed at his record when he was leader of Britain's prosecution service. Starmer defended that record earlier, but would not comment further on Musk. But European leaders like French President Emmanuel Macron are also condemning Musk's recent endorsement of Germany's leading far-right party, just 2 months before an election there. Macron says Musk is directly intervening in that process. Now, Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz, in a New Year's Eve address, urged voters not to let the, quote, owners of social media channels decide the outcome of the general election, but he did not mention Musk by name nor his platform X. Now, Musk is not yet a government representative, but Norway's prime minister says that his enormous reach and wealth makes his involvement in other countries' affairs worrying. He added, this is not how it should be between democracies and allies. Back to you.
All right, Lee, thanks very much. The New England Patriots have fired their head coach, Jerod Mayo, after just one season with the team. He led the team to a 4-13 record after Bill Belichick left the team before this season. In a statement, Patriots owner Robert Kraft said it was, quote, one of the hardest decisions he's ever had to make, but that the team's performance this season was not what he'd hoped for. Okay, tens of millions of people are waking up to winter weather today across the country. CBS News Baltimore has been following the storm and its major impact in their area. Let's go to their coverage on the ground.
To the Capitol to sled, which is a great place to sled. I don't know if it's legal, but whatever. And we've got people here. They are shoveling a lot of snow. He's been working hard all morning. A lot of these businesses are actually closed today, as you can imagine. Even Starbucks is closed, so that's how you know it's really serious. Helly Hansen, however, is open. If you need some last-minute snow gear, that's a good place to go. It is looking absolutely beautiful downtown. If you're driving, it's not so fun. We were driving earlier. It was a pretty treacherous drive, but at least it's not that ice. You know, if you take it slow, I don't want to recommend it, but if you take it slow, you're going to be okay. But, you know, it's not that ice, so you're not going to, like, slip super crazy. We have seen some people driving. They're taking it slow. The snow plows are working overtime. It seems like as soon as they get a patch cleared, it sort of just fills right back up. So a lot of people walking around, having fun, taking pictures of the beautiful winter wonderland downtown right now. Kids are saying they're going to go build some snowmen, have a snowball fight. I don't really know if it's snowball-worthy snow. We'll see if I can do it with one hand. Yeah, it's kind of that powdery stuff. Good for a snowboard. I don't know about a snowman, but we're going to be downtown all day taking a look at conditions, and we'll keep you updated. Amy?
Thank you for the live report.
All right, let's check in on the final forecast with CBS News national weather correspondent Rob Marciano. Rob, can you sound as enthusiastic as that Baltimore reporter?
I love it. I love that she's embracing that, getting in there, testing the snowpack, talking to people. Let's, you know, she inspired me. Let's see what's going on here. Yeah, it's not great for a snowball. Not great. You know, Sean Herbert, I know you know him. He's our producer. He made a good point because, you know, typically, like in big cities like New York, you get a snowfall. It makes everything look prettier, right? But D.C., everything's so white to begin with. You know, I'm not sure it makes it any prettier here. Maybe right along the mall, like when it's pristine grass, but they have a hard time with the plows here. They don't have as many as most people do in the north, so it's been a slow go to get the plows through here. And tourists here, they want to go to the museums. They're all shut down. So they're just kind of walking around and saying, well, what's going on here? The Congress, though, they're in there. They've got business to do today, so that's what's happening here. Radar shows a little bit of a gap that will be coming through D.C., Baltimore, Philly, in the next few hours, and then another resurgence of precip tonight with a pulse of maybe a few more inches. So we're far from done with this thing. And then once it comes through, temperatures fall off the table yet again, not just this week, where temperatures will be a hard freeze all the way down to the south, but the next 6 to 10 days in the deep south will be well below average. So we're in winter. Got to embrace it, just like that, our friendly reporter there in Baltimore. Back to you.
And I can see also the Popo has arrived to finally take Sean Herbert away. So wish him well. And you guys stay warm out there. Thanks for doing all those hits for us. Appreciate you.
You got it, Bell.
All right, we're waiting to hear from Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who's set to speak amid reports he is planning on stepping down. We'll bring that to you live as soon as he begins. But for now, that does it for me. After the break, Elizabeth Cook is live from San Francisco with all the news breaking from coast to coast. This is CBS News 24/7.